But that one was speaking concerning the inner sanctuary, the one which is his body. Then when he was raised up out from among those who are dead, his disciples remembered that this he was saying, and they believed the scripture and the word which Jesus spoke. Now, when he was in Jerusalem at the Passover feast, many put their trust in his name, carefully observing with a purposeful interest and a critical and a discerning eye his attesting miracles which he was constantly performing. But Jesus himself was not entrusting himself to them because he possessed an experiential knowledge of all individuals, and because he was in no need of anyone bearing testimony concerning the individual person, for he himself was knowing experientially what was in the individual. Now, there was a man of the Pharisees, Nicodemus by name, an outstanding man in authority among the Jews. This one came to him in a nighttime visit and said to him, Rabbi, we know positively that from God you have come, a teacher, for no one is able to keep on constantly performing these attesting miracles which you are constantly performing, except God be with him. Answered Jesus and said to him, Most assuredly, I am saying to you, unless a person is born again, that second birth having the same source as the first one, he is not able to see the kingdom of God. Nicodemus says to him, How is a man able to be born, being an old man? He is not able a second time to enter the womb of his mother and be born, is he? Answered Jesus, Most assuredly, I am saying to you, unless a person is born out of water as a source, even out of the Spirit as a source, he is not able to enter the kingdom of God. That which has been born out of the flesh is flesh, and by nature fleshly. And that which has been born out of the Spirit is spirit, and by nature spiritual. Do not begin to marvel that I said to you, it is necessary in the nature of the case for all of you to be born again, that second birth having the same source as the first one. The wind blows where it desires to blow, and its sound you hear, but you are not knowing from where it is coming and where it is going. So is everyone who has been born out of the Spirit as a source. Answered Nicodemus and said to him, How are these things able to come to pass? Answered Jesus and said to him, As for you, are you the teacher of Israel, and do not you have an experiential knowledge of these things? Most assuredly I am saying to you, that which we are knowing, we are speaking, and that which we have seen with discernment, to that we are bearing testimony, and our testimony all of you are not receiving. Since I told you concerning the things which have to do with the earth, and you are not believing, how is it possible, if I tell you about the things which have to do with heaven, that you will believe? And no one has ascended into heaven except he who came down out of heaven, the Son of Man. And just as Moses elevated the snake in the uninhabited region, in like manner is it necessary in the nature of the case for the Son of Man to be lifted up, in order that everyone who places his trust in him may be having life eternal. For in such a manner did God love the world, insomuch that his Son, the uniquely begotten one, he gave, in order that everyone who places his trust in him may not perish but may be having life eternal. For God did not send off his Son into the world in order that he might be judging the world, but in order that the world might be saved through him. He who places his trust in him is not being judged. He who is not believing has been judged already, and is as a result under judgment, because he has not put his trust in the name of the uniquely begotten Son of God, with the result that he is in a state of unbelief. And this is the judgment, that the light has come into the universe and is here, and men loved rather the darkness than the light, for their works were pernicious. For everyone who practices evil things hates the light, and does not come and face up to the light, lest his works be effectually rebuked. But he who habitually does the truth comes and faces up to the light, in order that his works might be clearly shown to have been produced by God. After these things came Jesus and his disciples into the Judean land, and there he was staying with them and was baptizing. Now, John was also engaged in baptizing in Aenon near Salem, because water, much of it, was there. And they kept on coming in a steady procession and were being baptized, for not yet had John been thrown into the prison. Then there arose a discussion on the part of John's disciples with the Jew concerning ceremonial purification. And they came to John and said to him, Rabbi, he who was with you across the Jordan, to whom you have borne witness, behold, this one is baptizing, and all are going to him. Answered John and said, A man is not able to be receiving even one thing, unless it has been given to him out of heaven. As for you, yourselves bear me witness that I said, As for myself, I am not the Christ, but that I have been sent before that one. He who has the bride is the bridegroom, but the friend of the bridegroom, he who stands and hears him, with joy rejoices because of the voice of the bridegroom. This, therefore, my joy has been fulfilled. It is necessary, in the nature of the case, for that one to become constantly greater, but for me constantly to be made less. He who comes from above is above all. He who is of the earth is of earthly origin and nature, and from the earth as a source he speaks. He who comes from heaven is above all. That which he has seen and heard, to this he bears testimony, and his testimony not even one receives. He who receives his testimony has set his seal to this, that God is true. For he whom God sent off on a mission speaks the word of God. For not by measure does he give the Spirit. The Father loves the Son, and all things he has given into his hand. The one who places his trust in the Son has life eternal. But he who refuses to place his trust in the Son, being of such a nature that he refuses to be persuaded, shall not see life, but the wrath of God is abiding on him. Then, when the Lord came to know that the Pharisees heard that Jesus was constantly making and baptizing more disciples than John, although Jesus himself was not baptizing but his disciples were, he abruptly went away from Judea and went off again into Galilee. Now, it was necessary in the nature of the case for him to be going through Samaria. He comes therefore to a city of Samaria called Sychar, near the small plot of ground which Jacob gave his son Joseph. Now, there was in that place a spring, the one which had belonged to Jacob. Then Jesus, having become wearied to the point of exhaustion by reason of his journey, was sitting thus at the spring. The hour was about the 6th. There comes a woman of Samaria to draw water. Jesus says to her, Give me to drink. For his disciples had gone off into the city in order that they might buy food in the marketplace. The Samaritan woman then says to him, How is it that you, being a Jew, are asking a drink from me, being a woman of Samaria? For Jews do not associate with Samaritans. Answered Jesus and said to her, If you knew the gratuitous gift of God, and who it is who is saying to you, Give me to drink, you would in that case have asked him, and he would have given to you water which is alive. She says to him, Sir, you do not have anything with which to draw, and the well is deep. From where, therefore, do you have this water, this living water? As for you, you are not greater than our father Jacob, who gave us the well, and he himself drank from it, and his sons and his cattle, are you? Answered Jesus and said to her, Everyone who keeps on drinking of this water shall thirst again. But whoever takes a drink of the water which I shall give him shall positively not thirst, no, never. But the water which I shall give him shall become in him a spring of water gushing up into life eternal. The woman says to him, Sir, give me this water in order that I may not continually be thirsty and keep on coming here to be drawing. He says to her, Be going on your way, call your husband at once and come here. The woman answered and said, I do not have a husband. Jesus says to her, You aptly said, A husband I do not have, for 5 men you have had, and now he whom you have is not your husband. This truly you have said. The woman says to him, Sir, as I am carefully observing you, I am coming to the place where I see that you are a prophet. Our fathers in this mountain worshipped, and as for all of you, you all say that in Jerusalem is the place where it is necessary in the nature of the case to be worshipping. Jesus says to her, Be believing me, woman, there comes an hour when neither in this mountain nor in Jerusalem will you all worship the Father. As for you, you all worship that which you are not knowing. As for us, we worship that which we know, for the salvation is from the Jew as a source. But there comes an hour, and it is now, when the genuine worshippers shall worship the Father in a spiritual sphere, and in the sphere of truth. For indeed, the Father is seeking such as these who worship him. God, as to his nature, is spirit, and for those who are worshiping, it is necessary in the nature of the case to be worshiping in a spiritual sphere, and in the sphere of truth. The woman says to him, I know positively that the Messiah comes, the one who is commonly called Christ. Whenever that one comes, he will make known to us all things. Jesus says to her, I am he, the one speaking to you. And at this juncture his disciples came and kept on wondering because with the woman he was speaking. However, no one said, What are you seeking? Or, Why are you talking with her? Thereupon, the woman abruptly discarded her water jar and went off into the city, and says to the men, Come here, see a man who told me all the things I did. Can this be the Christ? They went out of the city and proceeded in a steady stream towards him. In the meanwhile, his disciples kept on begging him, saying, Rabbi, eat. But he said to them, As for myself, I have food to eat concerning which you have no knowledge. Then the disciples kept on saying to one another, No one brought him anything to eat, did he? Jesus says to them, My food is to be doing the will of him who sent me and to carry his work to completion. As for you, are you not saying, There are yet 4 months and the harvest comes? Behold, I say to you, lift up your eyes at once and view attentively the fields, that they are white for harvest. Already the one who is reaping is receiving pay and is gathering together fruit for life eternal, in order that he who is sowing and he who is reaping may be rejoicing together. For in this is the aforementioned saying genuinely true, that there is one who sows and another who reaps. As for myself, I sent you to be reaping that with reference to which you have not labored. Others have labored, and as for you, you have entered into their labor. Moreover, out of that city many of the Samaritans believed on him because of the report of the woman when she was bearing the following testimony. He told me all things which I did. Therefore, when the Samaritans came to him, they kept on begging him to abide with them. And he remained there 2 days. And many more believed because of his word, and kept on saying to the woman, No longer because of your talk are we believing, for we ourselves have heard him, and we know positively that this one is truly the Savior of the world. Now, after the 2 days he went out from there into Galilee, for Jesus himself testified that a prophet in his own country is not correctly evaluated, and is therefore not treated with the respect and deference which is his due. When therefore he came into Galilee, the Galileans received him in a friendly manner, having seen with a discerning eye all the things as many as he did in Jerusalem at the feast, for they themselves also went to the feast. He came then again into Cana of Galilee, where he made the water wine. And there was a certain one, a king's courtier, whose son was sick with a chronic ailment in Capernaum. This one, having heard that Jesus had come from Judea into Galilee, went off at once to him and commenced begging him to come down at once and heal his son, for he was about to die. Then Jesus said to him, "Unless you see attesting miracles and miracles that excite wonder, you will positively not believe." The king's courtier says to him, "Sir, come down at once before my little boy dies." Jesus says to him, "Be proceeding on your way, your son is living." The man believed the word which Jesus spoke to him and proceeded on his way. And as he was now going down, his slaves met him, saying that his little boy was living. So he inquired the hour from them during which he was getting better. They said then to him, "Yesterday, at the 7th hour, the fever left him." Then the father knew that it was during that hour in which Jesus said to him, "Your son is living." And he himself believed, and his whole house. Now, this again is a second attesting miracle Jesus performed, having come out of Judea into Galilee. After these things there was a feast of the Jews, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. Now, there is at Jerusalem at the sheep gate a pool which is called in Hebrew Bethesda, having 5 covered porticos. In these there was lying down a multitude of infirm people, of blind people, of crippled people, of those, the members of whose bodies were withered, waiting for the stirring up of the water. For an angel from time to time was accustomed to descend into the pool, and he stirred up the water. Then the first one who stepped in after the stirring up of the water was cured of whatever disease had gotten possession of him and was holding him down. Now, there was there a certain man who had spent 38 years in his infirm condition. Jesus, having seen this one lying prostrate, and knowing that for a long time already he had been in that condition, says to him, "Do you have a longing to become well?" The man who was infirm answered him, "Sir, a man I do not have in order that whenever the waters are stirred up, he might throw me at once into the pool. But during the time I am coming, another steps down before me." Jesus says to him, "Be arising, snatch up your pallet, and start walking, and keep on walking." And immediately the man became well, and he snatched up his pallet and went to walking about. Now, there was a Sabbath on that day. Therefore the Jews kept on saying to the man who had been healed, "It is Sabbath, and it is not lawful for you to pick up your pallet and carry it." But he answered them, "He who made me well, that one said to me, 'Snatch up your pallet and start walking, and keep on walking.'" They asked him, "Who is the man who said to you, 'Snatch up your pallet and be walking'?" But the one who was healed did not know who it was, for Jesus had withdrawn, a crowd being in the place. After these things Jesus found him in the temple and said to him, "Behold, you have become well. Do not go on sinning any longer, lest something worse happen to you." The man went off and told the Jews that it was Jesus who made him well. And on account of this, the Jews went to persecuting Jesus, because these things he was doing on the Sabbath. But he answered them, "My Father keeps on working until now, and as for myself, I also am continually working." On this account, therefore, the Jews kept on seeking the more to kill him off, because not only was he continually breaking the Sabbath, but also because he was saying that God was his privately owned, unique Father, a Father in a way in which no one else had him for a Father, making himself equal with the deity. Accordingly, Jesus answered and was saying to them, "Most assuredly, I am saying to you, the Son is not able to be doing by himself anything except that which he is seeing the Father doing. For whatever things that one is doing, these things also the Son in like manner is doing. For the Father is fond of the Son, and is constantly showing him all things which he himself is doing. And greater works than these will he show him, in order that you may be marveling. For even as the Father raises the dead and makes them alive, thus also the Son makes alive whom he desires to. For not even does the Father judge anyone, but has given the judgment wholly to the Son, in order that all may be honoring the Son, just as they are honoring the Father. He who is not honoring the Son is not honoring the Father who sent him. Most assuredly, I am saying to you, He who habitually hears my word and is believing the one who sent me has life eternal, and into judgment he does not come, but has been permanently transferred out from the sphere of death into the life. Most assuredly, I am saying to you, there comes an hour, and now is, when the dead shall hear the voice of the Son of God, and those having heard shall live. For as the Father has life in himself, so also he gave the Son to be having life in himself. And authority he gave him to be executing judgment, because he is a Son of Man. Stop marveling at this, because there comes an hour in which all who are in the tomb shall hear his voice and shall come out. Those who did the good things to a resurrection of life, those who practice the evil things to a resurrection of judgment. As for myself, I am not able to be doing even one thing by myself. Even as I hear, I judge, and the judgment which is mine is a just one, because I am not seeking the desire which is mine, but the desire of the one who sent me. If I alone testify concerning myself, you say, my testimony is not true. There is another who bears testimony concerning me, and I know positively that the testimony which he gives concerning me is true. As for you, you have sent men on a mission to John, and he has borne testimony to the truth. But as for myself, not from the presence of man am I receiving testimony, but these things I am speaking in order that you might be saved. That one was the lamp which burns and shines, and as for you, you became willing to rejoice for an hour in his light. But as for myself, I have a witness greater than that of John, for the works which the Father has given me in order that I might bring them to a final consummation, the works themselves which I am constantly performing, they are bearing witness concerning me to the effect that the Father has sent me on a mission. And he who sent me, namely, the Father, that one has borne witness concerning me. Neither his voice have you heard, nor his form have you seen. And his word you do not have abiding in you, because him whom that one sent on a mission, this one you are not believing. You are always searching the scriptures, because, as for you, you think that in them you are having life eternal. And those are the ones which testify concerning me. And yet you do not desire to come to me in order that you may be having life. Laudation from men I do not accept. Moreover, I have known you from experience, that the love of God you do not have in yourselves. As for myself, I have come in the name of my Father, and you are not receiving me. If another comes in his own private name, that one you will receive. As for you, how are you able to believe? Habitually receiving laudation from one another, and the praise which is from the presence of the only God you are not seeking? Stop thinking that, as for myself, I will bring an accusation against you before the Father. There is one who accuses you, Moses, on whom you have placed your hope. For, had you been believing Moses, in that case you would have been believing me, for concerning me that one wrote. But since the writings of that one you are not believing, how is it possible that you will believe my words? After these things Jesus went off to the other side of the Sea of Galilee of Tiberias. And there followed with him a great throng, because they had been viewing with a discerning eye the attesting miracles which he was performing upon those who were sick. And Jesus went up into the mountain, and there he was sitting with his disciples. And there was near the Passover, the feast of the Jews. Then Jesus, having lifted up his eyes, and having looked attentively at a great crowd coming toward him, says to Philip, From what place shall we buy loaves in order that these may eat? However, this he was saying, putting him to the test, for he himself knew that he was about what he was about to be doing. Answered him Philip, Loaves worth 200 denarii are not sufficient for them, in order that each one might take a little. One of his disciples, Andrew, The brother of Simon Peter says to him, "There is a little boy here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 small fish. But these things, what are they among so many?" Jesus said, "Make the men sit down." Now there was much grass in the place. Then the men sat down, the number about 5,000. Then Jesus took the loaves, and having given thanks, he distributed them to those who were seated, likewise also from the fish, as much as they desired. Now, when they were satisfied, he says to his disciples, "Gather up the broken pieces which remain over, in order that nothing be lost." Then they gathered them together, and they filled 12 wicker baskets with the broken pieces of the 5 barley loaves which remained over to those who had eaten. Then the men, having seen the attesting miracle which he performed, began to say, "This man is truly the prophet who comes into the world." Then Jesus, having perceived that they were about to come and to be taking him by force in order that they might make him king, withdrew again into the mountain himself alone. Now, when evening came, his disciples went down to the sea, and having gone on board a boat, were going across the sea to Capernaum. And darkness had already fallen, and not yet had Jesus come to them. The sea, a great wind blowing, was rising. Then, having rowed about 25 or 30 furlongs, they carefully watched Jesus walking upon the surface of the sea and coming near the boat, and they became afraid. But he says to them, "It is I, stop fearing." Then they began to be willing to receive him into the boat, and immediately the boat was at the land to which they had been going. The next day, the crowd which had taken its stand across the sea and was still standing there, saw that another little boat was not there, except one, and that Jesus did not enter the large boat with his disciples, but that his disciples had gone away alone. Other little boats came from Tiberias, near the place where they ate the bread after the Lord had given thanks. When therefore the crowd saw that Jesus was not there, nor even his disciples, they themselves went into the little boats and came to Capernaum seeking Jesus. And having found him across the sea, they said to him, "Rabbi, when have you come here?" Jesus answered them and said, "Most assuredly, I am saying to you, you are seeking me, not because you saw attesting miracles, but because you ate of the loaves and were satisfyingly filled. Stop working for food which perishes, but work for the food which abides for life eternal, which the Son of Man will give you. For this one the Father sealed, even God." Then they said to him, "What are we to do as a habit of life in order that we may continually be working the works of God?" Answered Jesus and said to them, "This is the work of God, that you continually be believing on him whom that one sent off on a mission." They said then to him, "What therefore are you performing as an attesting miracle, in order that we may come to see and believe you? What are you working? Our fathers ate the manna in the deserted region, even as it stands written, bread out of heaven he gave them to eat." Then Jesus said to them, "Most assuredly, I am saying to you, it was not Moses who has given you the bread out of heaven, but my Father gives you the bread out of heaven, that which is genuine. For the bread of God is he who comes down out of heaven and gives life to the world." They said therefore to him, "Lord, ever give us this bread?" Jesus said to them, "I alone, in contradistinction to all others, am the bread of life. He who comes to me shall positively not become hungry, and he who places his trust in me shall positively never thirst. But I said to you that you have both seen me, yet are not believing. All that the Father gives to me shall come to me, and the one who comes to me I will positively not throw out into the outside, because I have come down from heaven, not in order that I might continually be doing my will, but the will of him who sent me. And this is the will of him who sent me, that all which he has given me I shall not lose anything of it, but shall rise it up on the last day. For this is the will of my Father, that everyone who discerningly sees the Son and believes on him may be having life eternal. And as for myself, I will raise him up at the last day." Then the Jews went to grumbling concerning him, discontentedly complaining in a low undertone, muttering, because he said, "I alone am the bread which descended out of heaven." And they kept on saying, "Is not this Jesus, the son of Joseph, whose father and mother we know? How now does he say, 'Out of heaven I have come down'?" Answered Jesus and said to them, "Stop grumbling, conferring with one another secretly in undertone mutterings. No one is able to come to me unless the Father who sent me draw him. And as for myself, I will raise him up on the last day. It stands written in the prophets, and they shall all be those who are instructed by God. Everyone who has heard in the presence of and directly from the Father and has learned comes to me. Not that anyone has discerningly seen the Father except he who is from the presence of God. This one has with discernment seen the Father. Most assuredly I am saying to you, he who believes has life eternal. I alone, in contradistinction to all others, am the bread of the life. Your fathers ate the manna in the deserted region, and they died. This is the bread which out of heaven descends, in order that a person may eat of it and not die. I alone am the bread, the living bread, which out of heaven came down. If anyone eats of this bread, he shall live forever. And the bread indeed which I shall give is my flesh, given on behalf of the life of the world." Therefore the Jews began wrangling with one another, saying, "How is this man able to give us his flesh to eat?" Then Jesus said to them, "Most assuredly I am saying to you, unless you eat the flesh of the Son of Man and drink his blood, you are not having life in yourselves. He who is eating my flesh and is drinking my blood is having life eternal, and I will raise him up on the last day. For my flesh is true food, and my blood is true drink. He who keeps on eating my flesh and drinking my blood, in me is constantly abiding, and I in him. Even as the living Father sent me on a mission, and I live because of the Father, likewise he who is eating me, that one shall also live because of me. This is the bread which out of heaven descended, not even as the Father ate and died. Not even as the fathers ate and died. He who eats this bread shall live forever. These things he said in the synagogue as he was teaching in Capernaum. Many of those who had been following his teaching and learning from him, having heard this, then said, "Offensive and intolerable is this discourse. Who is able to be hearing it?" And Jesus, knowing in himself that his pupils were grumbling concerning